Now, as we start our foray into the 2025-2026 FAFSA, just let you know the links are going to be provided, or you can follow the breadcrumbs as we do in the video here. We're going to show you how to apply for federal financial aid for the 2025-2026 school year, and more importantly, how your SAI, the Student Aid Index, is calculated. It used to be known as the EFC, or the Expected Family Contribution, and we're going to give you some supporting reference documents. It might not be as simple as you think or as you have been led to believe. We'll look at the online FAFSA submission site, how to get and preview a printed FAFSA, compare it to a simple version of a few years ago, access a federal student aid handbook, and then look how a student aid index is calculated. Now, as you watch this video, remember that filing the FAFSA is free, and that point is well made on the sites of the government, regardless of how much time and confusion it may cause you, especially if you're a first-time filer. You are encouraged to do this sequentially online at FSA.gov or the FAFSA submission site, or wherever it takes you. But remember, it's a loaded gun. Be very careful what you're doing there. Here at Nest Egg's Financial Soup channel, we're going to give you the links to source reference materials that should be reviewed and referenced before your FAFSA is entered and formally submitted online. With that, let's begin. Okay, the federal student aid, Studentaid.gov, apply for aid/FAFSA, the website here. Okay, 2025-26 form now available, log in to start. So you can file this online, and it gives you a whole bunch of information here. Who, how long, what do I need? And there's a whole bunch of online information here on instructional videos through the help center and across the board here. Now let's take a look on the FAFSA form, how to complete, the deadlines, status. What's interesting here is loans and grants, loan repayment, loan forgiveness. Now, because there's so many options here about loans, guess what? This is primarily a way to apply for different types of loans. You have undergraduate and graduate loans, parent loans for undergraduate students, loan entrance counseling, loan acknowledgement, plus loan counseling. So the federal financial aid is good for loans unless you qualify for either a Pell Grant or a Teach Grant. So the grants are relatively lean to the amount of loans that you can get here. And also notice there's loan repayment and loan forgiveness here. So this is where most people go in to the FAFSA and FAFSA.gov or Student Aid or whatever link you may get. It all takes you here. Filing is free, and as you start in the process here, this is how the data is formally entered and subsequently submitted to the governmental website for determining your student aid index. Okay, now let's get into the meat of the matter here. This is a way of getting the printed FAFSA to preview and see what's going on before you go online and file it. What I simply did is I went to studentaid.gov/resources#FAFSA. Again, this link will be below in the description. So let's go ahead and click this, and we get to here, and we have a 2025-2026 FAFSA PDF. And here we go, a FAFSA form. Let's see how many pages it is. 22 pages, all right? So let's take a look here across the board. There's a lot of information here, why, how to complete, Privacy Act, Continued, Tax Information Act, and here's the form. Student identity, who is a student, parent, who is a parent, what colleges do you want to go to, a spouse of a student, parents, contact information, family size, number in college, tax return information, parental assets. This here is a whole science and an art, figuring out what's an asset counted and what is not. Spouse or partner, more information on tax returns and a preparation tax return, and just some notes here. So this is now a 22-page document that you should really print out and review before going online and filling out a FAFSA. And let's go through some details here in terms of the source materials. Again, the links will be in the description below this video. All right, to contrast and compare and how the FAFSA has evolved over the last couple decades, this is an example of a FAFSA I started out with way back earlier in my career here. This is a 1998-1999 FAFSA, and at that time it was filled in with pencil or black ink. You send it in, and it was scanned, and it was 4 pages. All right, so things have evolved or morphed since then in terms of more complicated requirements, more people applying for aid, some rightfully so, some perhaps not so rightfully so. This is what it was like in 1998, 1999, just as a comparison. So let's go back to reality as of 2025, 2026 FAFSA years. All right, so now let's go to the Federal Student Aid Handbook. And by going to FSAPartners.ed.gov, you'll get here. You got two ways of going here. One, you go Knowledge Center Home, or you go to FSA Handbook directly. Let's do right here. Or if you wanted to, quick reference, FSA Handbook, 2025 Handbook. Filling out the FAFSA form, 26 pages. A little bit more intensive descriptions of the form fields you have to fill in online. Privacy Act, tax information, how it comes across, marital status of the students, household, student information, veterans, definitions, all the nuances of each definition that is requested on the FAFSA form. Legal dependent examples, what's a legal dependent? Unsubsidized loans, number in college, number of family members, federal benefits received. So you can see this is quite an intensive description of the FAFSA form instructions. Perhaps the most important one here on page 16 and 17 is what's an asset and what is not an asset. Right here. So go forth. So a lot of details on what to expect or how to fill in the correct information on the FAFSA form. Quick 26 pages. That's number 2. So all these chapters are very important, but chapter 5 on special cases might have extreme importance. Professional judgments, special circumstances are financial conditions that justify an aid administrator adjusting data elements in the cost of attendance or in the student aid index calculation. Unusual circumstances. So here's some good things in here about examples on what constitute a unusual or special circumstance that can make you qualify for more federal financial aid. Now, to finalize all the information that we're going to provide about the FAFSA and the SAI, let's go over to the resource. So back to Federal Student or FSAPartners.ed.gov. Going to go to Knowledge Center Home. We're going to go down Library, Resource Type, Handbooks, Manuals, or Guides. And we're going to do the 25-26 SAI and Pell. And this is the 59-page document that tells you the 3 different formula or the 3 different cases of calculating an SAI. And I'm going to go through everything specifically here, but I'll just give you a rough idea of what's in here. Basically, scan down here, determining grant eligibility. More importantly, calculate the student aid index. Formula A, Formula B, and Formula C. Dependent and 2 types of independents. Most students are dependent of their parents. So here we have a simple Formula A dependent example. Parents' income and all, they want to know cash flow into the household. So, and then we'll subtract some offsets here that may have been included in a tax return. For example, rollovers and things of that nature show up in a tax return, but they're really not income that's received during the year. Then you have some allowances against the income, and then they have what's called an available income. So, cash flow into the house, take out things that may have been added into your AGI that really wasn't a cash flow into the house, and then come up with a available income. Then they want to go for a contribution from assets. In other words, how much have you saved in the different types of accounts? And there's a whole paragraph, chapters, sub-chapters and stuff on what assets to use and what not to use. And then you have a total contribution here. So what's interesting here, there's an asset protection allowance and there's an asset conversion rate. And there was also a allowance against income. So that's PAI. So we got some tables on here, allowance against income. Then we have the student's contribution from income, and apparently cash flow into the students. The student has an income protection allowance of $11,510. So they can earn up to this without having affect their SAI calculation, because the SAI calculation on the income part of the student is assessed at 50%. Now, the student's contribution from assets, again, is it a parental asset? Is it a student asset? Again, that's not for this type of time for discussion. They convert it at 20%. Whatever these add up, multiply it by 20%, and you get parents' contribution, student contribution from income, and student contribution from assets. And then that's how they calculate the SAI, the Student Aid Index. 3 components: parental, which is which is combined income and assets, and student income and assets separately. Now here comes the interesting thing. Is way back when there used to be a divisor for the number in college. That is no longer available. Let's take a look here at payroll taxes. Let's go down here. Asset protection, income protection allowance. If you have 4 in your family, they're going to subtract 43,870. So that's what they figure a family of 4 could use, would be assessable. Anything above 43,870 for a family of 4 is fair assessment for the SAI calculation. Table A4 is very important. It's the asset protection allowance. These used to be in the order of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, and then they're all zeroed out. So there is an asset protection allowance, but unfortunately it happens to be 0. So there's no protection against assets, and here's the calculation available from income. So we got Formula B for the independent students with a spouse or children for Formula C. So we're not going to go through those. Now some of you may ask, there's got to be a better way to do this, and of course there is. Get someone who has done this, maybe perhaps a licensed financial planner, get a formal, concise picture of your options of your financial household. You got to get your assets listed, you got to get your liabilities listed, you got to get yourself a balance sheet. One of the things that we see all the time in the financial planning area is that if you don't know the game you're playing, you don't know the rules. You're only going to win if you get lucky. With that being said, this isn't a side hustle. I've been doing this for years, and there's other planners that have been doing this for years too. Contact me for help or to locate a credible professional in your hometown. Now, if you want a background check, you could always go to FINRA.org or SEC.gov and put in the planner's name, and you can see employment history of the person in question. Thanks, and I hope to be chatting with you shortly.